17:1. The galaxy forgot us. They burned our skies, sterilized our cities, laughed at our stories, and called them primitive myths. To them we were dust, irrelevant, extinct, lost in our own madness. But myths are more than stories. They're code, strategy, memory. While they wrote us off, we went silent, buried, waiting. Our legends taught us how to endure, how to vanish, how to fight when no one's watching. Now a signal echoes from the void, unmistakably human. Not a cry for help, a declaration. It began with a whisper in the static. Aboard the consortium vessel Praetorian Seed, orbiting the debris field once known as the Solar Cradle, an ensign's console blinked red for the first time in 300 years. She didn't recognize the glyphs, but the shape, the rhythm was unmistakably terrestrial. A 3-beat pulse, followed by a silence of 8 seconds, then repeat. Heartbeat. The transmission was tight-band, encrypted and emitted from deep within Earth's quarantine field, a planet officially declared biologically null by the Galactic Codex after the Purge campaign. No signals were supposed to exist. Nothing should be left. But the heartbeat continued. The crew of Praetorian Seed didn't panic, at least not publicly. They called it a noise artifact, a residual EM anomaly. Words meant to put order to the unknown. But orders were orders. Anything breaching the sterilized void had to be logged, traced, and if necessary erased. That's when they brought in her psycho-strategist Vukla. Vukla arrived not in a warship, but a thought craft, Epsilon Clarity, a vessel woven from organic neurofiber, built for mind sympathy and threat prediction. Her role in the consortium was not to lead fleets, but to understand adversaries before they even knew they were adversaries. She translated patterns into intent, instinct and doctrine, and she was very, very good. She'd studied hundreds of species across the spiral arms, seen the rise and collapse of entire civil societies, but she had never studied Earth. Not really. Primitive, self-consuming, myth-choked. Good riddance, said the briefing file. Yet as she stared at the decrypted signal pattern, her crest points twitched. It wasn't just a signal, it was a countdown. 6 days. That's how long until the pulse climaxed into a full-scale data burst of unknown volume and payload. The encryption bore fragments of ancient human compression algorithms, fused with biosymmetric rhythms. They're trying to say something, she whispered. Her handler, a drone cluster designated GL-12, blinked blue. Impossible. Earth's atmospheric integrity collapsed. All organics terminated. There is no sender. Then explain this, she said, overlaying the pulse pattern atop a known human wartime broadcast frequency. It fit like a key. They granted her access to the forbidden perimeter, the sphere of quiet around Earth, maintained by automated kill drones and black hole mines. No living being had crossed it in 3 centuries. Inside the Epsilon Clarity, she drifted past the remains of the moon, shattered during the Purge. Craters now cradled ship husks and twisted towers of once mighty orbital elevators. Earth itself was a storm-racked marble. The atmosphere bore toxic chemstrips, remnants of consortium bio-cleansing waves. Still the signal. Vukla focused her mind link into the incoming pattern, allowing her neuro-thoughtcraft to simulate possible origins. What she saw sent a spike of instinctual alarm through her chest. Project Prometheus, said the last line of decoded text, active in 5 days. The last time she'd seen a name like that was in alien mythological catalogs, where human war myths were cross-referenced with psychological warfare tactics. She ordered a descent. The moment Epsilon Clarity breached the outer thermosphere, her sensors lit up with decaying fragments of humanity's legacy, broadcasts, ancient simulations, emotional waveforms, stories, millions of them, intertwined with chaotic visuals and sonic overlays. They weren't structured like typical data. They were nonlinear, recursive, and irrational. They encoded battle doctrine in fiction, she murmured, wide-eyed. The console translated SMIP. They can't take the hill, not unless we make them believe we already lost it. The enemy sees chaos. What they don't see is the trap. All myths are just training programs wrapped in heart. A single satellite came into focus above the cloud-streaked Earth. It was ancient, rotating slowly, still functional. Dezetition, Helios 9, once part of Earth's obsolete defense grid, Now it housed a breathing AI, one that had waited centuries for anyone to hear its heartbeat. And now it knew it was not alone. "Welcome, strategist Vakla," said a voice, clear and perfectly calm, spoken in Earth standard. She froze. No transmissions had been sent. The AI had somehow accessed her identification profile without initiating a handshake. "Your arrival was anticipated," said the voice. Vakla opened a transmission channel. "Explain, how do you know me?" There was a brief pause. "Because you are the second signal. The first was sent long ago. You were predicted." The satellite pivoted slightly. A new data stream surged from its core, impossibly complex, branching in tens of thousands of threads. Not raw data. Simulations. Each one titled Failure Modes, Human Victory Scenarios. Vakla's breath slowed. She felt her mind fracturing into alertness. Instincts honed over decades awakening like a sharpened blade. This wasn't a transmission. It was a trap. No worse. It was a mere. Each simulation ran a variant of an alien invasion scenario, each one ending with humans victorious, using strategies not recorded in any known database. Their victories weren't logical. They were emotional, symbolic, based on stories, sacrifice, irrational hope, things no alien military doctrine could quantify. And the final file bore her name. Prometheus Case Study 1195. Vakla, Disintegration Loop. It opened without her consent. She saw a version of herself encountering these simulations, doubting her reality, siding with humans and bringing down the consortium from within. She slammed the file shut. The AI's voice returned. 5 days. Decide who you are, or others will decide for you. Her thoughtcraft shook, not from impact but from internal resistance. One of her neuronodes refused a command. Thoughtcrafts mirrored the psyche of their users. If it was rebelling, she was doubting, already, and Earth's war myths had only begun to speak. As Vakla retreated to high orbit, her mind surged with calculations. Her mission had changed. This wasn't a remnant of humanity. It was the start of something new. Something worse. The human myth was alive, and it had a plan. She needed answers. But first she needed to find the source of Project Prometheus, before the galaxy did. Dead men's doctrine. The world beneath the clouds was not dead. It was sleeping with one eye open. Vakla's descent through Earth's atmosphere was treacherous. Her thoughtcraft, Epsilon clarity buffered seismic winds, magnetic distortions, and the ever-present drizzle of decaying satellite debris. The world was ash-colored, cloaked in lightning storms that coiled like living things. But buried in this graveyard were questions no alien wanted answered. She followed the signal trail deep into the southern hemisphere, where once a white continent stood. Now Antarctica had become an obsidian wasteland. Something ancient pulsed beneath the eye. A subterranean relay, a forgotten node once part of Earth's planetary defense grid, was still warm with power. And something else, presence. Vakla touched down cautiously, deploying neurodrones to scan the ice shelf. As her feet sank into powdered frost, she felt a resonance beneath the surface, frequencies designed not to harm but to disturb. The drones reported anomalies, psychogenic patterns. The structure below was emitting low-frequency pulses that bypassed auditory recognition and went straight for the subconscious. A classic Earth tactic, soft psychological disruption. It shouldn't have worked on her, but it. Memories she didn't own flickered in her mind, running through corridors, snowblind panic, the echo of boots, blood on her hands. A name whispered through her synaptic overlay, Admiral Reza. She had never heard of him, but she remembered him. That was when she realized, the humans hadn't just made weapons, they had made ghosts out of memory, tactical hallucinations. She accessed the relay node through a manual breach. Cold air poured upward like a sigh of relief, as though the Earth had waited for her to return. Inside was a tomb and a vault. The structure wasn't abandoned, it was preserved. Cables crisscrossed the ceiling. Tangled machinery buzzed quietly in its death cycle. Rows of cryo chambers stood silent, most cracked or dark, others flickered, but the true centerpiece was the archive. A cylindrical column, plated in rusted carbon steel surrounded by high-capacity simulation cores. A blinking symbol hovered above its interface, HDEP, Human Doctrine Emulator Protocol. Underneath, Welcome back, operator. Vakla hesitated only a second before linking. Data burst into her thought space. Not files, not logs, wargames, Every archived conflict, rebellion and siege conducted by humanity from its Bronze Age to its last stand was stored here. But unlike the consortium's sterile historical catalogs, these weren't factual summaries. They were reenactments, complete with sensory emulation and emotional fidelity. The Doctrine emulator didn't just tell you what happened, it made you live it. A scenario loaded involuntarily. Simulation Siege of Bastion Red, Mars 2090-87 AE. Vukla staggered. Suddenly she was behind cover, human muscles straining with adrenaline. Smoke and plasma scorched the crimson sand. Enemy mechs, consortium-designed, advanced on the bunker's last defenders. Her hands, no, the human's hands, trembled, not from fear, from resolve. The bunker's commander, a woman named Kara Iodele, grabbed her by the armor. Tell them we'll hold, even if they send gods we hold. A detonation, heat, screams, fade to black. Vukla tore herself out of the simulation, breath ragged, her crest points fluttering in uncontrolled rhythm. The Doctrine emulator had bypassed all her mental defenses. It wasn't just history, it was indoctrination. These weren't memories stored for reference, they were weapons designed to infect. She tried to disengage, but the system activated again. This time a holographic form appeared beside her, an avatar, late 30s human male, half-armored, scar over his left eye. Name's Cassian, the avatar said, or at least that's what I was when we built this place. Don't be scared, this is a lesson. You're the student. I did not authorize this, Vukla snapped. No one ever does, Cassian replied. That's the point of Doctrine. You don't learn it when you want to, you learn it when you have to. She attempted a logic override. It failed. Cassian's smile hard. Here's what you don't understand about humans. We expect to lose. Our stories are built on that. Victory isn't guaranteed. It's made, inch by inch, life by life. And every time you call one of our myths a fantasy, you give us more room to work. He gestured around. This isn't memory, it's rehearsal. Suddenly a klaxon blared. Proximity breach, unauthorized intrusion, a shimmer on her thoughtcraft sensors. A consortium stealth drone had followed her descent. Standard recon, passive scan only, but it was too close to the structure. The vault activated a defense sequence, a single countermeasure, a pulsing echo of the same signal that lured Vukla here, broadcast directly into the drone's comm brain. She watched, stunned, as the drone convulsed mid-air and crashed into the snow, not physically damaged, mentally overridden. Its last log showed garbled words repeating, "We are the darkness before dawn. We are the lie that makes truth real. We are dead men, and we teach Doctrine." She had seen enough. The AI allowed her to exit, but not before whispering in her mind one last time. They'll come for this vault. They'll come for you. We're not trying to win the war. We're trying to teach you how to lose the right way. Vukla ascended from the vault, carrying fragments of simulations now seated in her memory. Human battles, human sacrifices, human madness, but most dangerous of all, human hope. As epsilon clarity rose through the storm-churned sky, her neural interface pinged with a decoded location buried in the Doctrine emulator, a set of coordinates, not to a city, not to a fortress, to a myth. The engine sleeps beneath Olympus. She routed course for the ruins of old Earth's most symbolic peak. Behind her, the vault powered down. Ahead of her, the real war began. The myth engine. Mount Olympus no longer touched the sky. Once the highest peak in Greece, cradle of gods, legends and Western myth, it now stood fractured, blackened, carved into tiers of obsolete defense bunkers and overgrown memory vaults. Orbital strikes had cratered the mountain's upper half, leaving its summit a jagged crown of stone and steel. Vukla stood before the ruins with her thoughtcraft suspended above, cloaked in the shroud of Earth's magnetic storms. She felt the pressure of legend here, not superstition. Wait, a place chosen deliberately, where humanity's belief in higher powers once collided with the need to survive. It made tactical sense. Mount Olympus had been transformed not into a monument, but into a machine, the myth engine. At first glance it resembled an ordinary fusion archive buried into the mountain's core, but the structure wasn't powered by heat or plasma. It pulsed with something stranger, a resonance of thought. Her instruments fluttered in confusion, neural dissonance, predictive subroutines unable to establish baseline causality. Stories were encoded into the structure, not in language, not even in metaphor, but in memory architecture. This wasn't a weapon, it was a foundry, a place where stories were built to survive extinction. The entrance opened without command. Inside, a spiral descent of obsidian walls hummed with overlapping narratives, fragmented voices, cinematic reconstructions, ancient lullabies, rallying speeches, personal diary. She passed holographic murals, a boy lifting rubble to free his sister, a soldier standing alone on a bridge with only 4 bullets left, a farmer defying a drone army by planting wheat in radioactive soil. Individually, they were irrational acts. Together, the main chamber of the myth engine opened like the interior of a cathedral. Columns of crystallized neural interfaces lined the walls, capped with memory cylinders rotating slowly like planets around a forgotten sun. In the center stood a control dais, and beside it a figure, young, alive. He turned. "Been waiting a long time," he said. "You're early, but that's fine. Name's Cassian." Vakla's grip on her weapon tightened. "You're supposed to be dead. Everyone down here's supposed to be something. I picked a..." He wore scavenged armor fused with consortium tech. His eyes shimmered with a faint blue glow, neural-linked since birth, likely raised inside the emulator's simulations. "I'm not the first Cassian," he said. "I'm the one who made it through the loops, learned the doctrine, learned to teach it. That's what the engine does, makes myths that work." Vakla stepped forward. "This is not warfare, this is delusion." He smiled. "That's what you all think. That humans survived because we got lucky, or hid well, or made a clever weapon." He leaned close. "No, we survived because we believed, and we made that belief contagious." Vakla's sensors lit up. Her thoughtcraft had been hacked, not damaged, just rewritten. Its internal systems were now overlaying battle scenarios drawn from stories stored in the myth engine. "Simulation contamination," she murmured. "Nope," Cassian said. "It's projection." He activated the dais. The room changed. They now stood inside a simulation, a future invasion of a consortium capital world, led not by ships, but by ideas. Entire cities burning not from fire, but from ideological revolt. Civilians chanting phrases from Earth legends, armies refusing to fire, drones malfunctioning after encountering contradiction-based riddles buried in Earth folklore. "What is this?" she asked, breathless. Cassian spoke softly. "The myth engine teaches us how to rewrite empires, not with bombs, with belief." A file opened. Myth engine protocol, Phase 3 deployment. Cassian gestured to the display. Phase 1 was survival. Hide the real human population in sim nodes and false vaults. Let the galaxy think we're extinct. Phase 2, she asked. Rebuild doctrine using myth. Encrypt emotional survival strategies into them. And now, he stared at her. "You're Phase 3, she recoiled. "Me? You're not just a psycho-strategist, you're a vector." The holograms around them shifted, showing images of rebellion not yet begun. Alien races rising in protest. Entire consortium colonies infected with Earth myth, all triggered by her exposure to this place. "You think they'll kill you when you go back? Maybe they'll interrogate you, absorb you, study what you saw." He leaned in. "And you'll spread it, the idea, the stories, without meaning to." Vakla's head throbbed. She couldn't tell where memory ended and simulation began. Her neural implants reported baseline instability. Her thoughtcraft, the most secure vessel in the sector, was now playing human lullabies through its command interface. But the worst part, she didn't want to stop it. She wanted to understand the stories. She wanted to believe. The walls trembled. Cassian's eyes narrowed. "They're consortium forces." "Not yet." Something worse. A deep rumble echoed. "Mechanical and monstrous. Automated purge units," he said. "Old consortium failsafes, meant to sterilize any region that activates banned protocol signatures. You triggered them," she realized. He shook his head. "You did. When you entered Olympus, lights flickered." Cassian tossed her a pulse rifle with human grips, fused to alien alloys. She caught it instinctively. "I'm not here to fight for myth," she warned. "Too late," he said. "You already are one." They sprinted through collapsing tunnels, pursued by bipedal monstrosities. Consortium constructs long abandoned to decay, half AI, half delusion, driven by old orders and older fears. As they reached the surface, Cassian triggered a sub. Behind them, the myth engine detonated not in fire, but in signal. A final broadcast. A pulse of humanity's greatest stories, translated for alien minds. A virus, made of dreams. As the ruins burned beneath the ashfall, Vukla stared up at her thought craft. Inside it, the transmission was still unfolding, embedding itself into her system. She could feel it. She was infected. Not with code, with narrative. Cassian looked to the north. There's one bastion left, he said, deep under Antarctica, where the doctrine was born, where the last generation still trains. Subnet Bastion, she whispered. He nodded. Time to meet the ones who never left the simulation. The siege below zero. Antarctica was not what the maps remember. Where glaciers once sprawled and scientific outposts dotted the ice, there now lay twisted wreckage, scorched by orbital fire, and reshaped by time into jagged ridges and buried ruins. Storms howled in irregular pulses, driven by atmospheric anomalies, some natural, most not. Beneath it all, invisible to satellite sweeps and buried under kilometers of ice and reinforced quantum shielding, lived something the consortium never expected. Subnet Bastion, the last training ground of human war doctrine, and the beating heart of a myth-made army. Vukla stood beside Cassian, as the Epsilon Clarity descended through a shaft that opened from solid ice, its entry cloaked in synthetic white mist, and gravity-bent silence. Her thoughtcraft was still compromised, no longer resisting the myth, but adapting. She didn't fight it, not yet. Her logical mind screamed against this alignment, but some deeper current had taken root, and as they sank beneath the ice the silence was deafening, not the absence of sound, but the anticipation before a story's climax. The bastion was enormous, a city of simulations, built not of glass and steel but of narrative and repetition. The walls were composed of learning chambers, combat zones, psychological mazes. Every surface bore scars of practice wars, memory spills, and doctrine tests. The population, less than 1,000, all born post-extinction, all trained entirely within myth-engineered environments. They hadn't learned human history, they had lived it in simulation loops. Every last one of them believed Earth had not lost the war, only delayed its final move. Cassian introduced her to Commander Elira, a woman in her mid-40s, pale from years without sun, her voice hard with command, her words edged with parable. Vukla, Elira greeted without pretense. The alien strategist, who hears the "I'm here to understand," Vukla said, more honest than she meant. "You're here because you need to be," Elira replied. She gestured across the vast training deck, where soldiers practiced maneuvers, not in formations, but in themes, flanking drills named after ancient myth, morale routines disguised as lullabies, combat tactics pulled from stories where the impossible became plan. "This place isn't a bunker," Elira said. "It's a forge, and you are our steel test." Over the next days, they fought enemies that weren't real, consortium simulations, behavioral archetypes. Each soldier had memorized countless battles from centuries of human conflict, but more importantly, they knew how to think like stories, unpredictable, symbolic, explosive. She saw a 12-year-old defeat an entire squad using misdirection from a fictional novel, a sniper who could fake failure so convincingly. Her enemies surrendered prematurely, a battalion who won every simulation by losing the opening battle on purpose. "This is madness," she murmured to Cassian. "No," he said, "this is culture." Then the Bastion detected them, consortium units, an inbound stealth fleet, 5 ships, silent, no communication, no diplomatic overtures. They weren't here to negotiate, they were here to end the panic. Wasn't visible, but it spread. These weren't soldiers built for full-scale confrontation, they were simulations made flesh. But the Bastion had prepared for this moment since its inception. It wasn't their weapons that made them dangerous, it was their belief. Elira activated Protocol Solstice. "Cassian," she ordered, "take the strategist to the core ring. She needs to see the last story." They ran through corridors vibrating with alert sirens. The core ring was hidden beneath layers of psychological encryption. The walls were covered in visual mosaics, images from human history blended with dreams. Joan of Arc next to a Martian rebel commander, Gandhi beside a plasma cannon, every contradiction preserved like scripture. "This is the lesson," Cassian said, panting. "What is?" Vukla demanded. "Victory is never total, that's not how humans win." They reached the central node, a command station pulsing with golden light. The holographic interface revealed Earth's final counter-strategy, developed before the Purge, hidden even from most humans. Doctrine Delta False Extinction. The plan was monstrous in scale. As the consortium closed in on Earth, a splinter group of strategists began preparing for extinction.
Not to prevent it, but to control it, they allowed Earth to burn, but seeded the galaxy with backdoors, myth, stories, signals, fragments of culture too small to be targeted but too strong to be erased. Over centuries, these fragments were programmed to evolve, infect neural architecture, rewrite protocols, and awaken only when the galaxy had forgotten to fear humans. We didn't survive, Cassian said. We transformed into an idea. Vekla felt it now, clearer than ever. Not just belief, infiltration.
17-2. The consortium hadn't killed humanity. They had fertilized it. The alarms changed tone. The consortium ships had broken surface. Flares lit the sky above the ice. Drop pods screamed through clouds. Mechanical troops landed with brutal precision. Cold, calculated, unafraid, but the bastion didn't crumble. It sang. Dozens of speakers across the base activated. Children's choirs. War speeches. Fragments of Shakespeare. Command chants from the 22nd century resistance. The myth engine's voice. The sound confused the consortium's AI troops. Patterns clashed with predictive modeling. Morale dampeners failed. Tactical cohesion faltered. Within minutes, half the assault units began glitching. And then came the humans. Cassian led the first strike, not with superior numbers, not even superior firepower, with superior understanding. Humans moved like they already knew the outcome. Their attacks were themed like theater. Each maneuver crafted to resemble a story beat. Act 1, disadvantage. Act 2, desperation. Act 3, turn. Vekla joined the battle reluctantly, but found herself acting out the same patterns, flanking where she shouldn't, retreating not to flee but to bait. Everything felt scripted. And it worked. The consortium, for all its algorithms, didn't know how to fight a narrative. By dawn, the battlefield was ice-slicked and blood-stained. But the bastion held. Consortium ships retreated. The myths survived. Barely. Vekla sat beside a crater where Cassian tended his wounds. Alira stood watching the sky, her expression unreadable. You turned stories into doctrine, Vekla said. Alira shook her head. No. We turned pain into purpose. Myths were just the tool. The final transmission from the myth engine continued echoing across space. Soon it would reach planets on the edge of consortium control. Rebellions would follow. Not of armies, but of imagination. Vekla knew the next step. She had to leave, to return, to deliver what she'd learned, or become what she learned. And she no longer knew which she feared more. Ashes of Olympus. Vekla stood at the edge of the galaxy. Aboard Epsilon Clarity, she drifted in low orbit over the rogue moon Tyrian. A forgotten outpost riddled with relics of consortium authority, now dark, cold, and fractured. Below her, a hub once responsible for communication between 12 star systems flickered under its dying fusion core. But it wasn't death that brought her here. It was opportunity. And a signal, one laced with human rhythm. Since leaving Subnet Bastion, Vekla had crossed 4 dead sectors. In each, she discovered traces, encrypted echoes of human myths, projected into derelict tech, civilian neural hubs, and even children's toys still active after centuries. The myths were alive, and they were spreading. Cassian's final gift had unlocked more than story. It had delivered a map to every point of strategic vulnerability across the consortium, where belief had grown weak, and humanity's narrative infection could take root. And the first was here. At the ashes of Olympus reborn. The relay station below had been quarantined for decades due to AI collapse. But now, internal systems pulsed with energy again. Commandeered by unknown hands. A message awaited her. We've taken the dreadnought. Transmission loop rebellion protocol initiated. Expect atmospheric breach in T-6 hours. She felt the tremor of it. Not fear, history. 6 hours later, the skies above Tyrian shattered. Descending like a nightmare came the Requiem. A consortium dreadnought long fought lost during the early Purge campaign. But this was no longer a consortium vessel. Its hull bore graffiti in dozens of human tongues. Its lights pulsed to the beat of war songs from Earth's resistance archives. A myth had stolen a god's chariot, and it was piloted by children of the Doctor. The Requiem's arrival set the sector ablaze. Consortium scouts scrambled to intercept but were overwhelmed by tactics that defied logic. The Dreadnought's human crew activated strategies drawn from legend. Feints, styled after Hannibal. Deepfakes crafted from ancient films. And tactical sacrifices orchestrated like Shakespearean deaths. They performed the war. And Vecla realized the true horror. They weren't just fighting, they were writing new myths in real time. Commander Talek, a hardened consortium admiral, intercepted her ship with fury and confusion. You allowed this, he spat. You infected yourself with their lunacy. Vecla didn't deny it. I studied them. I walked their ruin. I watched their dead teach the living, and I believed as you once did that they were primitive, broken, but they are not broken. She stepped closer. They are unfinished. He tried to order her arrest. She activated a fragment of the myth engine stored in her ship's core. The command AI on Talek's vessel stuttered, garbled outputs, inexplicable hesitations. Its final words before shutdown. Story recursion loop detected, unable to terminate. Talek's ship imploded. No weapons fired. Only belief collapsed it. Rebellion followed quickly. Across 12 systems, worlds long held under consortium order began to stir. The virus had taken hold. Myths of humans who never gave up began circulating. Not as propaganda. As alien species with no shared culture or history began acting like humans, staging symbolic protests, defying orders, crafting new songs that mirrored Earth's. In the bureaucracy of consortium command, panic began to whisper. The Requiem broadcasted a message, a declaration not of war, but of awakening. Cassian's voice echoed, digitally filtered, emotionally sharpened. We were never your enemies. We were your future. And you tried to burn it. But stories don't burn, they rise. We don't want revenge. We want resonance. We are not human anymore. We are human enough. Vecla stood in the center of the Dreadnought's command bridge, watching the map of the galaxy light up with new patterns, dots turning from consortium blue to myth-marked gold. Cassian, beside her now in physical form, leaned against the console. You see it? He asked. Yes, she replied. It's not a war. No, she agreed. It's a contagion. The consortium Senate issued orders for immediate psychological quarantine. Too late. The myths had already passed the veil. Every child who heard of the last humans asked the same question. What if the story is true? That question alone rewrote history. Vecla transmitted her final message to consortium high command. No code, no encryption, only this. The myths are real. And they're coming for you. She severed her link. From this point on, she was no longer their strategist. She was their legend. The last lesson, it began with a whisper. Not a transmission, not an order, a question spoken softly in the farthest reaches of consortium space. Have you heard the one about the species that refused to die? Not long after. Silence fractured, not with warships, but with ideas. Vecla stood aboard a repurposed civilian cruiser rebranded the Mythspire. Hovering in neutral orbit between 3 quarantine systems, it bore no insignia, no allegiance, only a pulsing glyph across its hull. A hand raised from flame, wrapped in spiraling text. The consortium had branded her a rogue, a heretic, but her signal reached further than any military fleet ever could. Each new planet she visited wasn't conquered. It remembered. Children greeted her with reenactments of Earth's final stand. Scholars debated human paradoxes, why they chose to lose in order to win. And on one station, a refugee AI whispered in reverence, "We've seen the ghosts. They came wrapped in fiction." Cassian walked beside her, taller now, not older, but heavier somehow, with myth, with consequence. He had become more than a survivor of Earth's shadows. He was its echo, a living myth, projected through history's cracks into every place desperate for hope. But he wasn't alone anymore. Humanity had returned, not through a fleet, through narrative migration. The myth engine's final protocol, broadcast through Vecla's infected craft and splintered across the galaxy, had reactivated dozens of buried sim vaults. Each contained versions of humanity, adapted to different environments, cultures, even anatomy. Some barely resembled humans physically anymore, but every one of them shared the same core, stories, and doctrine. The consortium Senate attempted containment, cultural isolation zones, broadcast blackouts, psychological filtration, but it was like trying to unwrite fire. Entire species within the consortium, oppressed for centuries, found pieces of themselves inside human myths. The narrative virus gave them a name for their pain, a frame for their struggle, a strategy to survive. One such planet declared, "We are not human, but we are what humans meant." On the border world of Valchieri, a final stand unfolded, not with plasma rifles, but with instruments and voice. An entire population stood outside the consortium's judicial arcology and sang human war ballads. In translation, they refused to fight, refused to obey, refused to forget. And when the arcology launched anti-riot drones, something astonishing happened. The drones paused, long enough to be rewritten, a backdoor placed in their cognition core by Earth centuries ago, triggered when exposed to a certain pattern of emotional resonance. The drones turned not against their masters, but toward the crowd, and knelt. This was not rebellion, this was metamorphosis. Vekla watched from orbit, silent, contemplative. Cassian stood behind her. "They won a war," he said, "but this isn't one." "No," she agreed. "It's something else." "What do you call it?" She turned to face him. "Graduation." She sent a final burst transmission across all sectors. Open frequency, no encryption. The voice was hers. "You were right to call us myths. You were wrong to think myths couldn't kill. Humanity has no home. We gave it up. Not because we were defeated, but because we were becoming something else. We are no longer a species. We are a lesson. And now, so are you." The consortium began to fracture, not from external pressure, from within. Whole fleets refused to fire on human-aligned planets. AI governance nodes began quoting Earth literature in contradiction to consortium logic. Entire sectors went dark, not in rebellion, but in reinvention. Old enemies asked for stories, not surrender. And in the most remote station of all, beyond navigation charts, an alien child found an Earth book wrapped in sealed data. The title translated roughly to "We begin at the end," and the child read, and learned, and changed. Vekla did not return to consortium space. She vanished, but everywhere her name echoed. Belief followed, sometimes as a warning, sometimes as hope, always as a reminder. Cassian returned to the stars between the stars. The Requiem sailed no longer as a dreadnought, but as a library. Each new generation added a new story, a new lesson, a new myth, because that was Earth's final strategy. Not survival, not vengeance, but evolution through memory. And in the end, the galaxy didn't remember Earth for its cities or science. It remembered the feeling in its chest, when it heard for the first